Hi, my name is Vanessa Vallely, and I am interviewing the wonderful Sadie Clifford, who is the Deals Gen AI Innovation Lead at PwC, about her career. Firstly, welcome, Sadie. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So let's get in. Let's get started at the very, very beginning. Tell me about your early career and how your journey into technology first began.
So I definitely had a very unusual route into technology. When I
Okay.
was at school, I loved maths and physics, and they came quite naturally to me. So naturally, my teachers kind of steered me towards studying maths or engineering at university. But I didn't really see myself in either of those worlds, and the thought
Yeah.
of studying something for 3 years that I wasn't sure about was terrifying.
Yeah.
So instead of forcing a decision, I decided to step into the world of work and try and figure out what it was that I wanted to do. I ended up in a back office role in a call center. It was very operational, so fixing billing issues or sorting customer errors. And on paper, that's definitely not the normal start to any tech career. But that's actually where mine began. By complete chance, I was sat next to the data analytics team. And I just remember one day kind of looking over, and they had all these dashboards up, code running. It looked very complex and very chaotic, but I just remember being really intrigued and wanting to know more. So I did what's probably become a bit of a theme in my career, and I got curious. I became friends with one of the analysts and asked him as many questions as he'd willingly answer. And the more I understood, the more kind of fascinated I became. And eventually that curiosity turned into action, and I started to teach myself. I taught myself SQL, Python, Excel, pretty much anything I could get my hands on, really. I didn't have any formal training. It was just me, Google, and a lot of trial and error. And after a while of self-learning, a junior data analyst role came up internally. I very nervously applied because I was very aware of the fact that I didn't have the formal education or background in this area. But I kind of took the chance anyway. And to my surprise, my manager took a chance on me. He kind of backed my potential and my wanting to learn over credentials. So yeah, I mean, no, I didn't end up going to university, but those first few years of my career were definitely my informal version of it. Um, there was a lot of late nights learning, experimenting, trying things that didn't work even the first, second, or third time. But with every kind of small win or small time that I kind of figured something out, I got my confidence grew. I think looking back, that opportunity and that role changed everything. It wasn't only my first step into tech, it was the first moment that I realized that you didn't need to tick every item on a job description to move forward. I didn't have a degree, but I had initiative. I had a willingness to learn and try and figure things out. So I mean, yeah, that's where my journey began. Not kind of at school, not even at university, but in a call center.
Absolutely, born out of curiosity. And I love that because there's an element of resilience there as well. I say teaching yourself, getting the skills that you need, trying something new. I think all of that is absolutely inspirational. So take me from that journey out of the call center into the world of work, because we know that careers are rarely kind of linear. So how did that journey kind of evolve over time? And perhaps what have those transitions taught you about building a career in what, let's face it, is a fast moving industry?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure to kind of that your career should follow some neat linear line, kind of school
Yeah.
degree, promotion, promotion. But tech just doesn't work like that. Um, Looking back at my journey so far, every shift that I've made has added something that I rely on now. The call center, it gave me a real practical understanding of how businesses run day to day, the kind of messy reality, the people behind the process. And I think that grounding has stayed with me because I think it's really important to always remember that no matter how advanced the tech is, it still has to work for real people. As I became more confident, as a data analyst, I stepped further into Python development. And that experience really changed how I think. It taught me that I had to break problems down properly. I had to think logically and be patient when things didn't work the first time. At the time, that change was about becoming more technical, but now I can see that it also enabled me to be more structured in how I approach challenges or problems. After Python development, I moved into contracting, which again shifted everything completely. Contracting drops you straight into the middle of things, new people, new challenges, new expectations, and you have to get up to speed really quickly. And that experience really shaped how I listen, how I assess situations, and how I try to add value fast. After that, I moved into the technical business analyst role. That kind of sat between subject matter experts and technologists. And that's probably where I realized that being technical and working in technology isn't the whole story. You can build something brilliant, but if it doesn't make sense to people or it doesn't get adopted and people don't use it, it really doesn't matter. That's where I probably really developed as a translator. So being someone who could move between the detail and the big picture without losing either of them. I think stepping into leadership was then probably my biggest mindset shift, especially when so much of my career until that point had been built on my technical expertise or knowledge. I was always the person who understood how it worked and could physically solve the problem. So moving into leadership meant that I had to redefine where my contribution sat. I wasn't the person closest to the detail anymore. I wasn't doing the doing. My value was in setting direction, supporting others, asking the right questions, making decisions without having all the answers or even enough information to make the decision. And letting go of that detail was very uncomfortable. But it taught me that leadership is about creating an environment for others to thrive and do their best work, and that you have to trust them to do it and trust their ways of working as well. I'd say now in Gen AI innovation, this is a space that changes weekly, if not daily. And what's interesting is I draw on every one of those earlier chapters, the operational grounding, the analytical thinking, the technical depth, the translation skills, and the people leadership. So I'd say if there's one thing that my journey has taught me, it's that careers in fast moving industries aren't built by climbing some theoretical perfect ladder. They're built by layering skills. Every move, even the sideways ones, added a layer for me. And it's that combination that creates resilience, because technology will keep changing, the tools will change, the roles will change. And in that kind of world, that adaptability and breadth of skills are far more important than following some theoretical linear path.
I love that. And for those of you listening, if ever you wanted a blueprint for success, you have just heard it from Sadie, because it is that breadth. It's layering your careers as opposed to kind of following that traditional path that doesn't, we know, Sadie, right? Doesn't really.
Yeah.
You touched on resilience, and obviously many of us experience moments like that test our confidence as well. Can you share a period in your life, either outside of work or in work, that stretched you and what that taught you about yourself?
Yeah, so I think that the period that stretched me the most happened very early in my career, and yeah, it did happen outside of work. I was 21 at the time. Things professionally were going really well. I'd stepped from a junior analyst role to a senior analyst role. I was finding my feet technically. I felt like I was building kind of real momentum. And then I was attacked by a dog, and in a literal instance, everything changed. The physical recovery was intense. I had multiple reconstructive surgeries, time off work, hospital, and all of that was really hard. But if I'm being honest, what caught me most off guard was what it did to my confidence.
Yeah.
Because the attack was to my face, it changed the way that I looked, and therefore it kind of changed how I saw myself. I became very hyper aware in every situation, meetings, sitting with friends, things that I hadn't really thought twice about before were suddenly very overwhelming. I think for a period I actually made myself smaller. I avoided situations that made me uncomfortable and kind of justified that to myself by saying, oh, I'll feel fine soon. Like, don't worry, it'll happen. It just takes time. But confidence doesn't come back when you kind of sit quietly hiding away from the things that scare you. I definitely had to learn that one the hard way. But once I knew that I had to take steps to actively rebuild it. I had to step into the uncomfortable situations in order to get away from that discomfort. And that's actually what led me to go traveling on my own. On the surface, it probably looked like a 21-year-old wanting to go and explore the world, and I definitely did want to do that. But there was definitely much more to it than that. I wanted to prove to myself that I was still brave, still capable, still myself. So I purposely put myself in situations where I was uncomfortable, having to introduce myself to new people, sit at dinner with new friends that I'd made, do all those things that kind of scared me. And it wasn't just the big headline moments like jumping out of a plane, which was great. It was the small kind of repeated acts of trying. Every time I did something that felt scary and uncomfortable but survived it, my confidence came back a little bit. I didn't really appreciate at the time how much that experience would affect me, even now, 10 years on. But it has taught me a lot. It's taught me that confidence isn't something you just have or don't have. It's something you need to build deliberately, whether you realize you're doing that or not. And resilience, at least for me, wasn't about pretending that everything was okay. It was about acknowledging that, yes, something is hard, sometimes very hard, but choosing to try and move forward anyway is what builds that resilience. So yeah, I mean, it was probably the hardest chapter of my life, but it's made me braver. It's made me more empathetic, and in a strange way, it's accelerated my growth both professionally and personally. I don't know who I would have been had it not happened, but I do know that it shaped who I am today, and I'm very proud of who that is.
Amazing. I mean, obviously a travesty of a story, but just one of such an inspirational kind of how you've kind of come back from that, how it's built up your confidence, your resilience as a person. Oh my God, you're incredible. So let's go back to work. So you obviously now work at that intersection between strategy and technology. So we touched on that, obviously, your breadth of technical skills, but for those listening who may not necessarily see themselves as, I'm going to put it in the kind of speech marks in the inverted technical.
Yeah.
What skills really matter in this space, do you think? Is it the technical skills, or is it, as you said, some other skills that people may already have and they don't think they're that important?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest myths is that to work in technology, you have to be the most technical person in the room. When I tell people that I work in AI, I often get, oh, you must be really clever, or oh, you sit and write code all day. And that always kind of makes me smile, because that just captures that myth perfectly. I mean, yes, I can code, but that is not what I spend most or any of my time doing. Most of my time is spent thinking, questioning, shaping ideas, and connecting people. What I've learned is the real value often starts with stepping back. We're naturally kind of wired to solve the problem that's sitting right in front of us, but in technology, that first problem often isn't the real problem. If you're, for example, automating hundreds of spreadsheets every month, it feels like the right thing to do to build something that cleans them and cleans them faster. But sometimes the smarter move is questioning why the data is arriving messy in the first place. And that shift from reacting to redesigning is where the real impact happens. So being able to kind of take that step back and look at the bigger picture is an important skill to have. I would say communication is also very important. With AI or technology, you often see very strong reactions. Some people are so excited, they want to use it all the time in absolutely everything, and others feel very cautious or even overwhelmed. What I've learned is that if you can sit at neither of those extremes, but try and find the balance to be able to translate something that's possible into something that's practical, that kind of how it can affect someone's day-to-day work, and most importantly, bring people along with you on that journey. All of that stuff together in communication is a kind of pivotal skill as well. I think another one is ambiguity. and it's probably the hardest skill to build. Technology moves quickly. What feels very advanced today will feel very basic tomorrow, and you can't map it out, you can't predict that. So instead of trying to, you kind of focus on your ability to test, adapt, try new things. And when you do that over time, you get more comfortable operating without this kind of perfectly mapped out plan in front of you or roadmap of what's coming 6-12 months down the line. Because in a fast moving world, you can't predict that. But I think at the heart of it all is also the human element. Technology is never just about the tool itself. It reshapes how people spend their time or how they approach their work. So if you focus only on the technical or how something functions, you overlook what that actually changes for the people who are using it. And that's where the kind of true transformation happens. It's the ripple effect that it causes. So being able to bring the human element into consideration when you're looking at these technical solutions is a really important kind of lens to look at or skill to have. So I think I would say to anyone who doesn't see themselves as technical, don't count yourself out. I think if you're someone who asks thoughtful questions, explains things clearly, stays steady when things feel uncertain and calm, and you can see that bigger picture, then there's absolutely a place for you in technology, because the future of technology isn't just going to be built by developers.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, wonderful sound advice. It's a myth that we've been trying to dispel for ages. You do not have to be technical to work in tech. Ignore the word itself. So thank you for doing that. So when you mentioned AI, and obviously that's where you sit within PwC. We know it's transforming how we work at pace. And as you said, just the very fast pace of everything that's going on with AI. From your perspective, why is it important for the people watching and other professionals to engage with AI now and not wait? And also, I want to ask, what misconceptions do you see about who can succeed in the field and who won't?
Yeah, I mean, AI can feel very overwhelming at the moment because there's so much noise around it. Every kind of headline either makes it sound revolutionary or completely terrifying. And when it's framed like that and there's so much new information every day, it's really easy to feel overwhelmed or see where you fit into it. But when I really strip it back, I don't just see a new tool, I see a shift in how we work. It's less about how can this help me do a task quicker, and more about asking, if this tool now exists, how should I be completely changing the way that I work? And that's the real change. It's not just about speed, it's about how decisions get made, how information gets used, and how work actually happens day to day. And I think that's why it's really important to engage with AI now. But I mean, even if you're not building it yourself, right? But it is going to influence how you or your team works. It's going to influence how choices get made. It might even influence what good looks like in your role. And if you stay curious and get involved, you have a say in how that's used. If you kind of switch off from it and don't engage, it will still move forward. It will just won't have you shaping it. It won't have your input into it. And engaging doesn't mean you have to learn code. It just means understanding enough to not feel locked out of the conversation, trying it out in a sensible way, asking questions, thinking about how it might change the way that you work. One of the most common things that I hear, especially from women, is I'm not technical enough for AI. And I completely understand where that mindset comes from, because it's like me looking back all those years ago at the data analytics team and thinking it's all chaotic and very complex. And thinking that it's something that other people are better suited to, and that feeling can be really overwhelming. But AI isn't just for engineers. If anything, it makes the human element more important. Yes, it can generate outputs quickly, but it doesn't understand your context, and it doesn't hold accountability, and it doesn't think about the consequences of its outputs. We do. And that's why how we kind of question it, how we challenge it, and how we apply it is what matters. That's how it brings value. So the skill isn't just in building the system, it's knowing how to work with it and work with it responsibly and thoughtfully. I think what the exciting thing is about engaging with AI is it's still new. Not everything is fixed. people are still figuring out workflows and approaches, and that means that there's still a real opportunity to influence how it gets used, or rather than having to adapt to something that's already laid out or being decided. So I would engage everyone to lean in now, not because everyone needs to be an AI expert, because I don't think that's the case, but because being a part of the conversation at this point means that you get to shape and have a say in what comes next. And that's a really powerful place to be.
Absolutely. Again, another one of our missions is, that we've seen recent Harvard studies, there's low adoption rates for women in AI. And as you say, we must lean into the conversation, if not to be experts, to understand its impact on us and the jobs that we do. So you are serial at giving back, Sadie, I know that. So alongside your core role, you also lead initiatives focused on building confidence and visibility for other women in tech. Tell me a little bit about those, but tell me why it's so important to you.
I think it's so important to me because I know how easily I could have missed tech altogether. It wasn't something that was visible to me. I went to an all-girls school, and it wasn't something that was really spoken about. It wasn't an industry I even considered. Like, I did not go to university. I found it because I was curious and happened to sit next to the right team. And I appreciate that a lot of that was proximity, timing, and chance, and not everyone gets that opportunity. And I think it's that awareness that really drives the work that I do with Her Tech Talent and Deals, which is our women in tech community. I wanted to help create something more intentional, the kind of space that I probably would have benefited from earlier in my career, somewhere where you can grow your technical capability, but also your confidence and your visibility, a place where women don't have to rely on chance or to build a career or confidence in tech. Over time, I've seen that one of the biggest barriers is rarely ability. It's more often hesitation. It's kind of that quiet voice in the back of your head saying, I'm not ready yet, I don't know enough. But in fast moving worlds like tech and AI, that hesitation quickly becomes a habit, and that's really hard to get out of. I like to talk about in Her Tech Talent, tech confidence, not just tech curious, because curiosity opens the door, but it's confidence that allows you to step through it. And it's that it allows someone to go that shift from observing to contributing, from attending the session to leading the session, from experimenting on your own to actively sharing what you've been doing with the world. And that shift really matters, because technology is shaped by the people building it, and the voices in the room get to influence what gets created, what's prioritized, what comes next. And if certain perspectives aren't present or don't feel confident enough to be heard, that absence is seen not only in the room, but in the output that solution delivers. So yeah, I mean, for me, this work, the Her Tech Talent, Women in Tech, is personal. I know what it feels like to question whether you belong in the room. I didn't always have that clarity or confidence that might have made my journey a bit more straightforward. So if I can offer some support that I didn't necessarily have, that encouragement, the exposure, the reassurance that you don't have to have it all figured out, I want to do that, because I've seen how much even those small shifts of confidence can really change someone's complete direction. That kind of changes people from thinking like they don't belong here to actually, I can add value here, and I do add value here. And that's really powerful. And they're kind of the moments that I want to create for the people that I work with.
Absolutely. And I love that. As I say, giving kind of back to others, mentoring others, sharing experience and stories is real leadership. And finally, for anyone listening to us today who wants to build a meaningful and future-proof their career in tech, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to them?
To give one piece of advice, it would be to stay curious and let curiosity pull you into that discomfort. I didn't have a perfectly mapped out plan. I definitely didn't know at 18 that I'd end up leading an AI innovation team, but I did have that curiosity. I asked questions. I sat next to people who knew more than me and listened. I put my hand up for things before I felt ready. And honestly, every time I followed that curiosity, it led me somewhere amazing. Everyone says technology moves quickly, and that can sound like a cliche, but it's genuinely true. Roles evolve, entirely new ones pop up overnight. So you can't really predict what's next, and you don't really need to, but what you do need to do is generate a habit of learning. And you do that through curiosity. I don't also think curiosity just applies to the landscape. I think it applies to people too. Don't try and do this journey alone. Be curious about people. Build what I would probably call your personal boardroom, mentors, peers, friends, people who challenge you, advocate for you, and help you think better, bigger. Ask them how they make decisions, learn from their experiences, let them see your ambition. Careers often feel individual, but they are rarely built on your own. And finally, I would probably say, I know you asked for one, give yourself permission to not grow in linear ways. Don't fear those sideways moves or stepping outside your comfort zone. Sometimes the move that looks like a detour is actually the one that gives you the skills and confidence and range that you need to stand out later. So yeah, stay curious, stay courageous, and you might be surprised where it takes you.
I love that. Sadie, it has been an absolute joy to talk to you. There is so much in there, sound advice, and I'm sure everyone watching will agree. Thank you so much for joining me for this interview. And yeah, Sadie for CEO. Let's see where you go next.
Thank you for having me. I've loved it.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.